Hi, I'm Carley of Gnarly Carley Gaming, and recently I moved from the US to the UK. As a big board gamer with over 500 games in my collection when I was in the States, one of the primary questions I got asked when I announced the fact that I was going to move was first how I was getting all of my games across an ocean, and then when I said I was getting rid of most of them, I got a lot of questions to the effect of how are you deciding what to keep? And then when I moved, which titles I ended up holding on to. The first thing I want to talk about is the choice to get rid of that many games. To me, it immediately didn't make sense to ship 500 games across an ocean. Of course, it would cost a lot of money to replace 500 games, but I didn't intend to do that either. To me, having 500 games is abnormal and kind of unnecessary. While collections can do a lot for us, I think they can serve as a trove of memories. Looking at a shelf full of games well played and well loved, even not being loved in this current moment, can evoke a lot of memories of wonderful experiences at the table. Additionally, having a vast collection can be a vast thing to look forward to in life. I think sometimes of aspirational games the way I look at a vacation of sorts. It's that hope for the future. It's the thing that kind of can get you through the drudgery of the day, knowing that you have those experiences to look forward to. It's nice to look at the shelf and see a bunch of things you're excited for in your future. So I'm not chastising collecting, but I still think 500 is gross in a way, gross as in massive, not gross as in like gross, in a way that I just don't need in my life. Even if I was a full-time gamer, I couldn't play 500 games in a given year. And so what that means is a lot of them have been stuck on my shelf, not unloved or unappreciated for the gaming that they've brought to me, but just kind of stuck and settled there. And so to me, moving and letting go gives those games an opportunity to be played again by the folks who either bought them from me or who they were gifted to from me, but also gives me space to grow as a person and a gamer, let go, not hoard, and give room to new adventures in my life. I chose this big adventure for myself, and I want that space to restart. That, and a lot of games just fiscally, in practical sense, don't make sense to ship regardless. There's a lot of games that are small boxes and cheap and replaceable here that if I really want them again, I can get them really easily. And I think doing so in that way means a lot. I let go of things that I didn't need to have immediately with me here, and I'm welcome to a lot of them coming back into my life. But I know that if I were to buy them again, that I would do so out of a place of like craving that experience for where I am at now in my life, and not just holding on to something that once served me. But as you may have deduced, I'm not at a loss here, and I certainly have more than the 15 games that I brought over with me. When I knew I was moving, I knew what games would already be here. This is a joint collection, and I knew certain titles like Ark Nova and Brass Birmingham that certainly would have been contenders for the list of games that I'd want to have with me. I didn't need to bring because they were already here. And I think weighing that up and figuring out as you move what's close to you in terms of cafes or friends in the area can help inform choices of what to bring over into a collection. So I will say, before I actually hop into my list, that the titles I chose were not just my top 15 games. This isn't a top 15 games list, though these are all games that I adore for one reason or another. But these were all chosen because they feel niches that I think this broader collection lacked. And there's certain kinds of titles, such as lighter things, whether because they're replaceable or because they were already here, that will evidently be missing from this list. A lot of these are bigger games, whether that's physically bigger or financially a bigger investment, that I wanted to have in immediacy. And so it isn't a fully representative list of everything that fills my heart gaming-wise, but these are incredible titles to me. So I would say all of these games probably float somewhere in a Carley top 50, at least emotionally, or right now, since a lot of these things are just things I'm enjoying of the moment. but I've definitely now explained enough, so let's go ahead and go through the games that I thought were cool enough to bring with me and why. Kelp is a game that I've talked about in my last 2 videos, so I'll quickly start with it. It's a 2-player, highly asymmetric game, shark versus octopus, that is slightly packing a bigger punch than most built for 2-player games, and it won't be out until later this year. And so I knew that 1, I loved it, and 2, it would not be immediately available for me to rebuy, so I definitely didn't want to leave it behind. Grand Austria Hotel is a game that my mom got me for my birthday a few years back, and so it definitely has an emotional tie-in with me, but I also consider it one of my 2-player favorites. It's a game designed for 2 to 4 players, but I think it really shines at 2. In the game, you're running a grand hotel, restaurant included, and so your goal is to usher in guests, get them fed, and then in bed. And really what it is doing your best to build up the best little engine that you can with a lot of dice luck involved. You can mitigate it a bit and you can do a little bit of a risk reward, but I find this game is great at 2 for its moderate length. It's lighter than most denser Euro games, but it gives me a full experience with a theme that just resonates for me personally. Most of the games that I brought with me are heavier, not just in physical weight for shipping, but also in terms of their complexity. And so many of the titles fall into the category of slightly meaty Euro games that I just crave playing a lot right now. The first of which is Revive. Revive, what I really dig about it is the resource action system. You have cards that can tuck into a top slot or a bottom slot and give you different resources and effect otherwise, and you're spending all of these things largely towards exploring, building, and populating. And that sounds like a whole lot of nothing, mostly because I think the theme is very loose here, but the resource engine and the actions are all really satisfying and flow together really well. And I've been playing it a lot in 2023 and already in 2024, and I love and dig it. The board of Bitoku looks like an absolute acid trip, but it is another one of those Euro titles with a little meatier gameplay that I absolutely adore. I first played it at Dice Tower East, and I made it partially through a demo and was heartbroken when they told me that I'd have to check it out of the game library if I wanted to actually try a game, because I got so immediately invested in my strategy. It is a lot to look at. It is more to digest, but it's a really addictive play that uses dice in clever ways that I just love, and I'm really looking forward to introducing to folks here. Then we have our Lacerda titles. Kanban EV is probably my favorite. It is about car manufacturing, which sounds dull as anything. I'm not into cars, but it's such a satisfying game. Lisboa was actually desired most by the person I'm living with. They were really interested in the art and had never played a Lacerda title. And so I brought that along that has to do with rebuilding the city of Lisboa. And On Mars is another Lacerda game that packs a really, really big punch. All of these are incredibly meaty and dense, and nothing quite like them exists in the collection here. So I was really excited to bring them over, not only because they really stimulate me mentally, but because there was a gap here, and I know that that will be experiences well loved here. Obsession is another game that I am properly obsessed with and definitely wanted to bring this way. It has to do with basically hosting events at your estate, trying to build up your family's reputation, and notably court what I believe is 2 rich orphans. It's a little murky, but basically it's Pride and Prejudice in Victorian England, as the box says. And it's really satisfying. It's actually really easy to hop into. You pretty much host an activity that's available to you with a certain number of people each turn. So I might host a afternoon tea and I need 3 ladies to go, so I'm playing 3 ladies. I get their benefits, I get the benefit of the event, and then I try to grow from there. And so you're constantly acquiring new ways in which you can host things, as well as new people that can be invited. And so it's basically a card and tile management mixed with Victorian politics and a little bit of love. And I just find it really satisfying and we enjoy it immensely. So very glad to have it. It's packed top to bottom full of a killer insert and all of the expansions as well. As you get to know me as a gamer, you'll find that I really like dice as workers in games, and that was one of the reasons I was drawn initially to Encyclopedia. That, and I love Darwin-esque themes, which seem to have been very popular in 2023 and 2022. In this game, you roll dice, and the strength of them impacts how strong of an action you get, but additionally, the dice you roll are not inherently yours. You assign them to different bonuses on your board, and someone else can draft and use your strong dice, but you get the kickback. And so this game is basically about studying different creatures and writing publications about them, but you have this dice dynamic at the core that I find very satisfying, but not overly daunting. I typically know what action I want to do and which dice will best help me do it, and I just have to debate whether it's worth giving you a bonus to do so. This game I really have enjoyed, but also part of the reason I brought it is the publisher went under last year, and so I wasn't sure about the accessibility of replacing this one in my collection. I won't say it was at the top of the list, but I do really, really enjoy it, and I didn't want to not have access to it. And so it joined the 15 that made it this way. This game right here is probably the one I'm most associated with, so it's probably no surprise that Anno 1800 made it here with me. A couple of years back when I first played it, I think it was my first game of 2022 that I tried at New Year's with my friend Scott, and I've been hooked on it pretty much since. I think I tried it just before then, and then we played it into the new year. But I more or less have, just through my sheer love of this game, have convinced over 200 people to buy it. I lovingly call it Cult Carley. But really what is so satisfying about this game is just the engine you build up. It's based off of a video game, and you're trying to continuously develop new industries and use your opponent's industries in order to make all your people happy. Inherently, you have a handful of people who all have things they want, and you spend the game making them happy. Someone making all of their people happy triggers the end of the game. In that way, it's very satisfying, because whether you win or lose, you've made a bunch of people happy and built up a bunch of industries. Super satisfying, not that long, and just like, it just resonates. And so I wasn't going to leave it behind since it wasn't here. Joining us in the ranks of dry-ass Euro games that I couldn't leave behind is Boon Lake. Boon Lake, I like to think of myself as the rootin' tootin'est cowboy, but really what it is you have kind of the area that is Boon Lake that is largely uninhabited, and you need to settle it and breed cows and all of that stuff. But really what I find satisfying about this game is its progression. All of the actions will flow in terms of strength value for all players, so it's really just about making the most of a turn and opportunities when they present themselves to you, managing some resources, and ultimately pursuing goals. And I think the way that goals are structured in this game give it a lot of variability, but also naturally push you in a direction, which makes it really approachable to teach even as a bigger game to new players, in my opinion. At the beginning of the game, you draft tiles, and actually I'm just going to pull one up. Ooh. Tiles like this, and they all have goals that you can score either in the first, second, third, or endgame fourth round. And the further along you score them, because you have to choose to score it at some point, at some round, 4 goals, 4 rounds, you have to score one each round, the more points you can earn. However, if you fail at scoring meeting its standards, you actually lose those points. So you have all your benchmarks kind of laid out for you at the beginning of the game, and you try to hit them. And each person has one of these goals that they picked for themselves, and when they score it, they get double, whether that's positive or negative points. So everyone's kind of pushed towards these same and variable objectives every game. However, you always have one that you inherently care the most about. And so there's kind of a natural progression, and you have to figure out how best to situate yourself for all of these objectives. And I just love it a lot. It's set up on the other side of the table now because I'm probably gonna play it tonight. Now, last but not least of the beefy babies is Terra Mystica. This might not look like Terra Mystica because it's a wooden crate, but it is a wooden crate designed for Terra Mystica. And now this is certainly an emotional choice in bringing this one for a variety of reasons. I've already done a whole video on Terra Mystica. It's the game that got me into gaming, but I still love it all the time. I think it's one that will get a little less play here. It's a little harder to get to the table, and I've played it a bunch. And there's new games that are Terra Mystica adjacent, like Age of Innovation, that I just got to try and want to explore more. But this one means a lot to me in many ways. One, it's the game that got me into gaming, still love it. It's a very special and emotional copy of the game to me. And even this wooden crate to me was given with love by someone who also has a special story and place in their heart for Terra Mystica. And so it's not something that I wanted to leave behind. I treasure having this copy with me. It's something that I can look at on a shelf and it makes it feel like my home. And so of the beefy babies, I would say this one is probably the most emotionally driven pick. And I'm so glad I have it, because while I really wanted to be pragmatic in my choices, this one kind of scratches both. It's a little less pragmatic, still playable, but also reasonable in just the artifacts and the things that make us feel like us and tell bigger parts of our story. And those are just not always things you want to leave behind. Now, the last 4 games that I'll talk about are a hodgepodge of Carley sentimentality, emotion, aspiration, just a mix of things that I really wanted to have, but kind of were outside the norm of most of the games that I brought, which were bigger boxes that were hit different for me. And the first of which is definitely an aspirational pick. It's Sleeping Gods. I got this for my birthday a couple years ago, and I played through one campaign of it. Absolutely loved it, but Sleeping Gods is an open world adventure game, and you go down very specific pathways and see only so much of the content that since I played, I've been itching to replay it. And it's largely very accessible to do so, and it's been a couple years since I've done it. And so as I was considering what I wanted to bring with me, I was looking around, and to me, this is the campaign that I wanted to bring and have a chance to revisit with people in this new chapter of my life. Mr. Jack, on the other hand, is the most nonsensical title I brought with me. It is nonsensical because it is £25 probably to replace this title. It is fully accessible. They have a new edition, and I just didn't need to bring it with me. It's a very small, even the box here is much bigger than the components in it. They probably take up this much space. The board's just a little big, but I wanted my copy. This is the game that I've played the most out of any on BGA. I went down an absolute Mr. Jack rabbit hole during the pandemic, and I'm just in love with it. I don't think it's a perfect game. I know that it's incredibly not well balanced. It's a 2-player game where one person is Mr. Jack, which is Jack the Ripper, and the other person is a detective trying to capture them. On the whole, in a perfectly balanced situation in terms of player ability, the detective will win about probably over 60% of the time. But I'm just smitten with it. It's one of very few abstracts that really resonate with me. And though they have a new edition, I got really attached to my old one. This is the copy I'm used to. This is the edition I'm used to. I used to work in a board game cafe and teach this to people on dates, and it was this one. And so I just really didn't want to replace it. So I didn't. And it wasn't practical. It was definitely fully emotional. But I wanted it, and so it was my one little silly choice because that's what my heart wanted. Planet Unknown, on the other hand, was my incredibly practical choice. This game is quite simple. Every player has a planet map that has its own special abilities, and on each turn, one player will spin this lazy Susan that sits in the middle of all players, or not spin it decisively and put a section in front of them. And then everyone with the section in front of them has to choose a tile to Tetris onto their board. Each of these tiles will boost you up different tracks, and every player can unlock different abilities with their asymmetric tracks. So there's a lot of asymmetry happening. But really at the core of it, it's a tile drafting game. On your turn, you choose which of the tiles will be available to everyone, and you pick and place tiles until basically people can't play on their board or certain amounts of tiles run out. It's very simple, but what I really love about it is the simultaneous player decision-making and how many players it can support. Because everything's simultaneous, everyone's engaged the whole time. But you also have things like objectives to either side of you between each player that you're competing against that push you in different directions, keep you looking up and engaged. It's puzzly, it's great, and it can play a larger number of players in an engaging way than most. So to me, this one just made sense to have. It's a lighter game night favorite of mine, very approachable for newer gamers, and just puzzly and satisfying. Additionally, I had a deluxe edition, and I wasn't sure how long it'd be till I could get another one, and I'm really smitten with the game, so I wanted to bring it with me. The last game on my list is a good game. It's what I'd call a baby Euro game. So it's not one of your big box titles, and it's also shorter than one of your bigger box titles like Revive and Arc Nova and Obsession. And it's Red Cathedral. And why I kept this one is not because it's not replaceable. It's not because I'm overwhelmingly in love with gameplay, though I like it. I do like it and I will play it. But the reason I kept it, as you can see, perhaps, is the fact that it's a French copy of the game. I got it on a trip to Paris. I both got it, learned it, and played it for the first time there. And this one, to me, is not just a souvenir that I didn't want to get rid of, but something very dear to me. I hold a lot of fondness for that trip and what it means in my recent history. And so having it on the shelf speaks louder to me than most games. It's holding on to that for me and keeping it here and reintroducing and letting that fondness grow with new gamers and new gameplay. In many ways, it's the epitome of what could be replaced if desired, but this copy is important to me, and so it was small enough that I could tote it along with the rest of the lot. So that's the list, and I hope it all wasn't too fantastically boring in the fact that it was very practical. While not a top 15 game list of sorts, it really does speak to the games I'm really enjoying right now and the type of joy I want to imbue in this new little home of mine. Of course, there's all the other games that are already here and around me that we'll be able to enjoy, but it speaks to a lot of Carleyisms, Carley emotion, and games that I do truly think are wonderful, in part. Now, in order to get them here, it was a bit of a headache. What I ended up doing was taking advice from my friend Daryl, and I took all the components out of the boxes, organized them into baggies, and basically packed them in their own suitcase. All the boxes, now empty and much lighter, I shipped. And this was so-so in terms of success. The components largely made it here without a problem. The boxes, on the other hand, got some dents and dings, but most of that was probably just me not packing as carefully enough. And I am a little heartbroken seeing some of the board game babies I love so much, and some of which are not cheap at all, get a bit dinged up, but I'm more so happy just to have them here with me to experience. So all in all, right now in our home collection, we probably have about 120 games. And I think my goal, despite getting a lot of games in for work, is to keep it around that number, to embrace the new experiences, but let go, knowing that I can always reach back out again and get a game again if I need to. But I really want a collection that can grow with me and feel manageable and well-loved. That's my true goal for this new home of mine. I hope you found this video enjoyable. Let me know if you have any questions about life, games, humanity in games, moving, though I probably have only so-so advice on it, or really anything else. But otherwise, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you for the next video.